In this video, I finally got my hands on one of these. This is the Lumix Leica 100-400 f4-6.3 zoom lens. Join me, roll titles. Well, hi YouTube, Brian James, that Micro Four Thirds guy with you once again, and I'm here on a beautiful day at Derwent Water on the beside Keswick in Cumbria, and I've got out this lens. This is the Lumix 100-400 f4-6.3 zoom lens. It's a lens I've wanted to get my hands on for some time, and I've been loaned it by my good friend Paul, so thank you Paul for this opportunity. I've got it loaded onto my Lumix G100 at the moment, and I'm going to be going out and trying to take some photographs of birds and see what I can do from the long lens point of view. So let's go and have a try and see what we can find. Now, the Micro Four Thirds system might be noted for being particularly small and lightweight, but there's nothing small and lightweight with this. We're having the 100-400 on the front of my G9 and the battery grip. This is one heavy piece of kit, but in comparison to its larger brethren on the APS-C or full frame stakes, it's still tiny and small. This is given a full frame equivalent of a 200 to 800mm lens. Now, if you can imagine a 200 800mm full frame lens on a full frame camera, you're talking huge. And the other thing that's going to be huge is the cost. This is not cheap. It's well over £1,000 new, but at the same time, it's considerably less expensive than its brethren on the larger formats, and that makes it a really good option for photographers to switch to Micro Four Thirds if they haven't considered up to now. Now, the other thing as well, we're having that slightly deeper depth of field. When you get up to the 400 sort of millimeter on this, you're finding that with compression, that depth of field becomes very limited, shall we say. So having the ability to have that little bit of extra depth of field in Micro Four Thirds in comparison, because it is a 400mm lens, even though it appears to have crop of an 800, you're still getting the depth of field of a 400mm, and that's giving you a little bit of an advantage. Now, the problem that I do have, of course, with carrying this is it's just incredibly heavy on the arms when you're used to something a bit lighter. I do find there's one or two little things that I don't like about it. Well, I don't do at the same time, actually. One is the tripod mount on the bottom. I find it gets in the way. Even though I've got big hands, it does tend to get in the way a little bit when you're trying to reach around the focus ring. Now, if I haven't got the battery grip on, I can turn it around and face it backwards so it's out of the way. With the battery grip on, though, there's nowhere to put it, so I've had to take so if I want to reach the focus properly, then I have to undo and take off the tripod mount. Now, luckily, having about six and a half stops of image stabilization by using the dual IS in the camera and the lens itself, it does mean that I can get away with an awful lot handheld, even at super long range. So I'm not bringing the tripod out with me at all at the moment. I'm seeing what I can actually get without the tripod, and it's pretty much okay. Now, remember, a lot of the time what I'm doing is when I'm shooting birds and wildlife, I tend to have it on shutter priority, and I'm using the shutter speed up over 1,000th of a second. So again, that does tend to help an awful lot when it comes to stability of the lens. But again, it's an 800mm equivalent lens for the angle of view. And if you're shooting full frame, of course, normally you'd be doing about shutter speed equivalent to the lens length. So as an 800, I should be shooting around about 1,000th anyway. So we're still getting the out here, having to be very careful what we're doing about stabilization and making sure that we're steady in the shots. Now it's a considerably bright day out here. It's a really nice morning. It's mid-morning. The sun is just nicely rising in the sky, and it's a very, very clean light. But that's caused me some problems contrast-wise, especially at the long ranges. So some of the shots that I'm getting, is very difficult to get detail in the front without blowing the background out. So it should be fun in post-production to see how I get on with those shots. Now, construction of this lens is absolutely beautiful, just what you'd expect from a Leica lens. It really goes together beautifully. There are flush finishes on it, and it's just a really nice all-metal construction, and it feels super quality, which is what it is. The thing I don't like is a little bit stiff on the focus and the zoom ring, and the zoom lock ring feels, well, it works extremely well, but you have to be very, very sure to engage it or disengage it properly, because you can bring it up to your eye and not realise that you've got it locked where you thought you'd unlocked it, and you miss the shot. So it is worth just double checking. But apart from that, it's great, and I'd rather have the rings slightly on the firm side than slack and loose and feeling as if they're badly made. Now, it's rare to get what I consider to be an almost flawless piece of kit, but this lens really is pretty close to it. I did a review on my Lumix 100-300, the Mark I version, very early on in this channel. I'll do a link to it above. And I love that lens. I think for the price of it, it's superb. But this really is in a different class, and it's what I'd been expecting, I must admit. But I was pleasantly surprised just how much of a different class. The optics on it are superb. I really don't see much in the way of flaws. If I was to start nitpicking from what I've seen, there might be a bit of softening at the long end, I think. Not totally sure, to tell you the truth, looking at the results I've got off now. I find it so hard to find anything wrong with it. It's just a beautifully made piece of kit. I love the fact that when you look on the lens itself, I'm just looking down at the lens as I'm talking to you, the engraving on it is really, really well done. The engraving of the focal lengths on it really stand out well and make it a very, very easy lens to use to prejudge. If you're prejudging your focal length before you take a shot, which sometimes when you're taking animals, it's worth trying to do that, just because you don't necessarily have the time to mess around when you've got that shot in front of you. This is nice and easy for that. I find that the tripod mount does tend to get in the way a little bit, but it's so easy to take off. It's just a single, very well made knurled thumb wheel that you just undo, and it just drops off the bottom. And also the collar for that wheel is again a single thumb wheel just undo, thumb screw just undo, and that allows it to very, very smoothly swing around the camera, so you can go instantly from portrait to landscape mode and back. And if it's mounted on a tripod as you're doing that, it's just a super smooth way to do it. And of course, it keeps it centered around where you're focused on. So when you go when you go from landscape to portrait, you've still got exactly the same subject point in the center, because it's swiveling around that center of the lens. I do find that the built-in lens hood is of good quality. It really is nice, very easy to undo. Again, a small knurled thumb screw on that to undo. Unobstructive, very easy to leave on the camera all the time, and very easy to leave on the lens. The lens quality, I find that the contrast on it is superb for what you've got. Again, it's a long lens, and it's difficult to get really good optic quality when you're at that sort of focal length, the 400 on this. But I find that it just is very, very nice. It's just about flawless. There are a couple of firmware updates on which since it came out, one of which was to improve its ability to work with the dual IS on Lumix cameras, which is welcome, and it's something which it does very, very well. On the side of it, there are a couple of switches. There's 3 switches. One which you can switch the autofocus on and off from, which I do like actually, because although it's easy on the G9 to switch the autofocus while you're shooting, it's not necessarily easy on other cameras, and this allows it very, very simply to be done. You can also switch on the power OIS, so you can actually connect and disconnect the image stabilization by a switch on the side. And there's also a focus limit switch, and this really is useful if you've got the limit switch, because at this sort of focal length it'll focus down to about 1.3 meters at its shortest. But when you're shooting a long way away, if you have to go through the full range of its focusing, it can be slow. So by limiting the focal range, by limiting the focus range, I should say, allows it just to focus in the range that you want it to, so your image autofocus becomes incredibly quick. Now, talking about autofocus, I've been using it on the G9 with the animal and human detection on, and it seems to work extremely well. I did this with the 100-300 a couple of years ago, and I was underwhelmed, shall we say, by that. On this, I just find that it clicks on very, very quickly, gets straight into focus. And although it is more expensive than that 100-300 range of lenses, you realise that you're getting what you pay for on this. It is considered being an expensive lens by some, but when if you compare this to what's available on the full frame formats and on the APS-C formats, it's actually incredibly inexpensive. To get into nature photography, this and the G9 at the moment is probably one of the best deals on the market, in my opinion, to be able to get into that sort of format and to be able to have something which is of a professional quality to take the shots that you'd like to do. This is something which I've never had the opportunity to do so much before, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So let's have a look at some more shots. Before I do, but though, if you're enjoying this video, please give a thumbs up to like it. That helps YouTube's algorithm to spread the word far and wide, and more people see these videos. And also, if you haven't subscribed already, please join the 7,600 subscribers that we have by hitting the subscribe link below, and also hit the notification button and the all, and tick the all beside it to get notifications every time I upload a video. Now, if you've used this lens, or if you own this lens, I really would be interested to hear your comments, because, as I say, this is a new area for me with this lens. I'm breaking new ground to what I'm used to on Micro Four Thirds. But if you've been using this for a while, let me know how you got on with it, and let me know what your results are like. And again, just drop them in the comments below. I'd love to read your comments. And so on to the specs on this. Well, you can see beside me, it is quite a big lens. This example weighs 1 kilogram. It's supposed to be 985 grams, but I got it at just over 1 kilogram when I put it on the scale. So it's not a light lens, but again, in comparison to the competitors in other formats, it's considered small and compact. Yes, it has got the 6.3 maximum aperture when you're at the fully zoomed in 400mm. But to get it any bigger than that, you'd have a physically huge lens, and this is big enough as it is, so I can live with that for the size and weight savings that I've got. 20 elements in 13 groups in this, with all the usual fancy sort of spherical type lenses inside. I'm not going to go into the details in that, but they're there on that. 72mm filter thread on the front. So again, a common filter thread. You can get filters very easily for this and without a problem at all. I said about the lens hood. It's a two-stage lens hood. You've got this part here, and also another part which is had as a thumb wheel, which is reversible. So it's a two-part lens hood. Don't know if I necessarily think that's a good or a bad thing. The other part's easy to lose, but at least you've got something built in onto it here, and nice and easy. Now, when this came out, it came out in January 2016 was the announcement date. So it's been out, something about 7 years now. So it's not a new lens. But at the time, there was nothing in this super telephoto zoom range for the Micro Four Thirds cameras. If you've enjoyed this, please, as I said earlier, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. If you are one of my fantastic Patreons, there's a list going up and down the screen here, the patrons who are on the channel. Thank you for your support for the channel. There's a link down in the description below, and if you'd like to give me a one-off subscription, a one-off payment just to help boost the channel along and keep us going, there's a PayPal link in the description below as well. Well, I've had a fabulous few days here down in Keswick with this wonderful lens, this 100 to 400 millimeter Lumix lens. Today it's mounted on my Olympus EM1 Mark II, as you can see, and I've done a few shots on both cameras, that and the G9, and it's been flawless on both. You're getting plenty of image stabilization on both those cameras. Obviously with the G9 you're getting the dual IS, but even on the Olympus it's working perfectly well. I found that the autofocus keeps up with almost everything I'm wanting to do. You have to be a little bit careful with how you set the camera up, and a little bit careful how you use the lens. It's not a happy, snappy lens. This is a specialist bit of kit, especially at the long end. You need to develop your skill set somewhat for that. Overall though, value for money at about £1,300 retail, this is just superb. Olympus are doing their 100 to 400, which I haven't had a chance to compare it to. I believe I might have one of those coming up in a month or two's time. Thanks, Trev, if the offer still stands. But that's about £1,600 retail. And obviously there are the pro level lenses on Olympus beyond that, and they're going into many thousands of pounds. So from a value for money point of view and a bang for your bucks insofar as performance, I think this is just about unbeatable. Yes, it's heavy. Yes, it's very heavy when you got it in the arm and you're used to smaller lenses. Yes, it is something to be reckoned with because it is long, and stability-wise, insofar as holding it, not insofar as image stabilization, but insofar as your own ability to stabilize it, is difficult because it does take a lot of strength and a lot of holding. But in comparison to the other formats, as I've already said, this is tiny and well worth using. Overall, I can't recommend anything better than this to use if this is a sort of lens that you're interested in. However, it is a specialist lens, and if you're into bird photography or nature photography or watching aircraft fly by, this is a great lens for you. I'd say go out and buy it. If it's something which you will use occasionally, well, it is a specialist lens, and you're probably not going to use it that often if you're just a general photographer. And if that's the case, it may be worth looking something towards the Lumix 100 to 300 or the Olympus 75 to 300. Both superb lenses, both I've done reviews on, but both considerably cheaper to get you into this area of photography. If it's something you are going to be carrying on a little bit though, just buy one of these. It's superb, you'll love it, it's great. Can't say much better than that, can't say much more than that. So until the next time, this is Brian James saying keep on taking your photographs and keep on having fun with your photography. Bye bye.